exact same process. You just have all of this information to guide you. And because you don't have to grow every generation up to maturity, you can do it 4 or 5 times faster. And you can take all the traits that you want and you can combine them into single plants and make amazing plants that are powdery mildew resistant and smell like chocolate and oranges and have crazy spikes of not just CBD, but CBDV and other interesting compounds and the terpenes that you want. You can combine all those traits together. So marker-assisted breeding is just classical breeding, but it's guided by all this data that we have now because of the genomic revolution. All right, so I'm gonna switch gears here and talk about Monsanto again. So this is a crop circle that was made by Filipino farmers who were protesting against Monsanto. I think it's really pretty. I just want to explain for a second, if you guys probably know this stuff, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. So the reason why they suck is because the practices that they use lead us toward an agricultural industry that is a monoculture, where people are just growing single varieties of plants in massive scale. They don't care about diversity, they don't care about genetic diversity, they don't care about variety, and commercially that's not what's viable in their world. But we have a plant where there's maybe 10,000 different varieties, and the plant serves dozens of different needs. So we don't want monoculture. We probably don't want it with corn either, but that's what we have. They also obviously have a monopoly. They own all the seeds. So Monsanto and DuPont Pioneer together own 70% of all the soybean seeds in the world. I don't have to tell you why that's not good. They also, when they have that, they can charge crazy prices, and they can go into the third world and disrupt entire economies by constantly raising prices, because once everyone's using their seeds, everyone has to use their seeds for various reasons, and they can charge whatever they want. There's also a problem with their use of genetic engineering. There's a lot of problems with that, but one big problem with that they don't talk about much is that when you have plants with artificial genes introduced, those plants can get loose. Those genes can get loose and they can get into the wild and they can change entire ecosystems in ways that nobody understands at all. And the big problem about that is that there's no regulatory oversight. They have enough lobbying strength in Washington that they can do whatever they want, and they can get GMO plants approved really easily without anyone looking at ecosystem issues or health issues. They also make plants that are resistant to pesticides. So they can dump glyphosate on everything. They can dump it in your city parks, and now we know that glyphosate causes cancer. But they sell glyphosate-resistant plants that makes it possible to dump glyphosate or Roundup on everything. So the pesticide burden in the air and all around us is just constantly increasing because of the things that they do. And another drawback to that is that you get pesticide resistant. You get superbugs that nothing can beat. They also have a tendency to let their plants or their pollen blow into the fields of small farmers and then sue the hell out of those little farmers for growing their plants. That's not good. They also do all of their work based on very restrictive plant patents. So they engineer their plants, and then they patent their plants, and then they own their plants, and then no one else owns those plants. They can sue anyone they want. They can sue small farmers. They can sue anyone for owning plants like that, and you can't save the seed, you can't replant the seed, and it's just a model of agriculture that breaks with 10,000 years of history and basically allows large multinational corporations to do the work of agriculture. It does not allow small farmers to do it. So real quick, I want to talk about the plant patent thing a little bit more, because as you'll see in a little bit, we're sequencing thousands and thousands of cannabis strains. And we want all of those strains to be in the public domain. We're sequencing the existing strains. Those belong to everybody. So, and we've been collecting from all over the world. And one thing that we did not expect was the pushback that we would get from Northern California in particular, where we're collecting samples and we're sequencing them and we're going to tell people what strain they have. And we want to give all of our data to this group called the Open Cannabis Project that is going to use that data to show that these plants have been around forever and they're in the public domain and they belong to everybody. But all the farmers in Northern California who we thought would be on board with that, because they don't like Monsanto either, they keep telling us the same thing. They keep saying, no, we want to patent our plants. We're going to get our own patents on this stuff. And I think that's pretty misguided. And I'm just going to tell you why real quick. So patents are not good for little farmers who live out in the woods. They just don't serve you. It has never been that way. Patents are a tool that big corporations use to protect what they have and to be able to sue anyone they want to. They were originally conceived of as a way to help small inventors protect what they invented, but they don't work like that. They only protect corporations that have the deep pockets to initiate massive lawsuits. And they've become a tool to stifle innovation rather than to protect it. They typically don't just restrict your right to make something and sell it, but they even restrict your private use of it, which doesn't make any sense for most industries. It definitely does not make sense for cannabis. They also encourage biopiracy, which is when a big corporation goes into some indigenous culture and takes a plant that they've been using for thousands of years and then patents it. Because there was no proof that it was in the public domain. Because no one knew about it because it was in Venezuela or Ethiopia. This has happened lots of times. Companies tried to patent different varieties of coffee. They tried to patent quinoa. There's now an international treaty that blocks this kind of stuff, but there's nothing to stop Monsanto from coming into our community and taking sour diesel and renaming it and patenting it, because there's no proof that it's in the public domain. And so that's one of the problems with the way that plant patents work in general, is that they encourage that kind of stuff. And also, kind of my final point in my conversations with these guys in Humboldt and Mendocino is that you actually can't get patents on cannabis anyway, because patents are federal, and the federal government is not granting cannabis plant patents anyway. But they will start to grant them pretty soon, and there's still a lot of growers who really want to patent their stuff. Which, by the way, if you make something really new, you should be able to protect it. But if you have something that's been around, you've been selling it for years, that's not how patents work. Once you sell stuff, you can't patent it. It's out there, everybody has it. It's in the public domain, everybody owns it at that point. So once patents are available for cannabis, and they will be, we have a robust plant patent system in this country, and it will extend to cannabis when the federal laws change. But they will take many years and lots of money to get. They will protect corporations. They will encourage corporations to sue the hell out of little growers who are growing stuff. And they just won't work very well anyway, because patents just don't work well in industries that are turning over really, really fast, where everything is changing. So you could spend years and years and lots of money protecting, your cut of Blue Dream, but there's going to be a lot of other great cuts of Blue Dream in a couple of years. It's just not, it doesn't make sense in an industry like this where there's so much ferment. So this leaves a big question, right? I mean, cannabis breeders for years have produced this incredible variety that we're all making use of now and that we all love. I mean, cannabis would be so boring if it was just a few varieties. There's no other plant in the world that is so diverse. So we want breeders to be constantly making new, amazing stuff. And breeders have never really managed to get paid very well. So how do we support that? And And our argument is that there are ways to support that without patents. So there are various different registration approaches that let you charge other people for licensing fees if they're selling your plant, but that don't restrict private use. So in the non-cannabis world, there's plant variety protection, which is like patents, but different in that it allows farmers to keep seed and replant it. It allows private non-commercial use, but it forces big companies to give you licensing fees. There's also the model of the Creative Commons, which was invented for the internet, and it just creates all these legal structures that lets you create something and release it, but say, okay, if you're gonna sell this, you have to pay me money, but if you're just gonna use it for your high school book report or for your own purposes or whatever, you don't have to pay for that. And that's how we think cannabis should be. If you're a breeder and you make something new and amazing, and Tilray wants it and they want to sell it, they should pay you for that. But if medical patients who live in your state want to grow it in their backyard, they shouldn't have to pay for that. That's not commercial use, that should be free. Not everybody agrees with this, but this is what we think. And there are various community-based efforts going on to make something like this happen. And I encourage you all to go and look at the Open Cannabis Project, which is one sort of nascent approach to dealing with this stuff. I mean, right now the federal government, which spends a lot of effort looking after intellectual property issues in every other field, it's not paying attention to cannabis. So if we want to do something that stops corporations from having control, but supports small breeders, we're gonna have to build some kind of community-based structure that does that. We're gonna have to do it ourselves because the feds aren't gonna do it now. And then when they do it, they're not gonna do it the way that we wish they would do it. So the last thought I wanna leave you with is that we have this window right now before the feds are involved in this, where Monsanto's not involved, the FDA is not involved, Syngenta's not involved, Philip Morris is not involved, and we can do our own things. We can start our own companies. We don't have to compete with multinational corporations, and we can deal with state lawmakers. We don't have to deal with federal lawmakers, and it's a magic window. We probably have 3 years, maybe 4 years. So right now we can structure this world to look the way we want it to look, and this is all the time we have. In 3 or 4 years, we're done. Whatever we put in place right now is what's gonna be there. And if it's strong enough and robust enough, when the feds come in, it will stick around. So I'm gonna turn it over to Rob Clark, who's gonna tell you actual real information about cannabis, because